What's going on, guys? It's Hayden. I hope you're having a good day so far, and welcome to part 2 of my Ultimate Beginner's Guide on how to invest in 2023. If you didn't see part 1 yet, make sure you check that out. I'll put a link to that one down in the description below. In part 1, I covered just a lot of really basic investing topics, such as what is investing, how you can invest money, and different types of things that you can invest in. In this video, we're going to go a little bit deeper than last video. We're going to talk about how much money should you invest? How often should you invest? What should you buy when you decide to invest money? When should you sell your investments? And then finally, why right now is a really perfect time to start investing. So first, we're just going to jump into the question of how much money should you invest? And the funny thing is, I actually can't tell you how much money you should be investing because it's really dependent on your own personal financial situation. However, I can give you some tips that will help you figure that number out for yourself. So step 1 is going to be to make a budget if you do not already have one. I made a pretty in-depth video about budgeting last week, so if you need help making a budget or just want to know more about it, make sure you check that one out. I'll put a link to it in the description as well. But one of the things I talked about in that video is a guide called the 50-30-20 rule that some people use to help them make a budget. And how the rule works is that 50% of your pay goes to your needs, 30% goes to your wants or your spending, and then the last 20% goes towards your financial goals. So investing is one of those financial goals that you should have that should go in that last 20%. There are also two other financial goals that you might have that I would say should take priority over investing. The first one is to pay down credit card debt, and the reason for that is credit cards usually have really high interest rates, so if you put off paying that down, you're just going to end up paying the credit card company more money. And then the second one is that you should build up your savings in case of an emergency that causes you to not be able to work for a certain period of time, or maybe a really big unexpected expense that comes up. The reason you want to have money for that in savings instead of investments is that you don't really know what your investments are going to do in the short term, and so it's not a good situation to be in where you're needing to sell investments and you may have lost money on them in order to pay for something. So after you consider all of this stuff, the amount you ultimately choose to invest is completely up to you, but just keep in mind starting sooner rather than later, even if you don't have a lot of money to invest at first, will be better in the long term because your money will have more time to grow and compound. So next, we're going to talk about how often should you invest money. There are basically two approaches that people take when it comes to the timing of investing money. The first approach is to try to time the market correctly, meaning you want to get in at a low price when you think the market is near its bottom. And then the second approach, which is what I'm going to recommend to most people, especially beginners, is called dollar cost averaging. So dollar cost averaging, or DCA for short, is the approach of investing the same amount of money at regular intervals regardless of what prices in the markets are doing. And an example of this would just be taking $500 from your take-home pay and investing that much on the first of every month or something like that. So there are several reasons that I would recommend for beginners to do this one instead. First, timing the market is nearly impossible because you don't actually know when the market is at the bottom until weeks or months after it gets there. No matter how much the market is down, it can always go lower. Secondly, dollar cost averaging can actually lower the price that you pay for your investments over the long term, because when prices are high, you're getting less shares for the same dollar amount than you are when prices are low. And then finally, dollar cost averaging just reduces stress and it helps reinforce a positive habit of investing money consistently. Next topic we're going to cover is what should you actually buy when you invest money. So I would recommend everyone to at least do a little bit of research on the different investment types that I talked about in part 1 of the guide. This will kind of help you figure out what interests you, but historically the best risk to return ratio that almost everyone has access to has been the stock market. So the average return of the S&P 500 index since it was created in around 1926 is almost 12% per year. The average return of the entire stock market in that same period is about 10% per year. These numbers are without inflation, which the long-term target for inflation is about 2%. So if you factor that in, then the S&P is really about a 10% increase in your purchasing power per year on average. But keep in mind, this is just the average because the stock market can and usually will have much higher returns than the average or much lower returns than the average in any given year. So because of this great return, that's why the stock market is a great place for beginners to get started investing. My number one piece of advice when it comes to investing in the stock market is to invest in an index such as the S&P 500 as opposed to investing in individual companies. Picking the correct companies to invest in that are going to be successful in the future takes a long time to learn how to do, and you need a ton of experience to be able to do it successfully and consistently. Warren Buffett is like the greatest investor to ever be able to do this, but No one else can really replicate what he's done, at least not yet. But when you invest in an index, you essentially get a small piece of all the companies within the index, and so your risk is spread out and it's much lower. If you're interested in this, you should check out the ticker symbol called VOO, which is a Vanguard S&P 500 Index ETF or exchange traded fund. And VOO actually makes up a large portion of my own personal investments, so that's why I'm recommending it to you guys. The next topic we're going to talk about is when you should sell your investments. So there's several reasons that you might want to sell some or all of your investments at some point. The first reason is if you need the money for something or you hit the goal that you were investing for initially. The most common example of this is when people invest throughout their careers for retirement, and then once they actually decide to retire and they stop making money, they start selling off some of their investments a little bit at a time in order to get the money to pay for their lifestyle. Another common reason is when parents start investing money when they have a small child for their college in the future. And then once that kid reaches the age where they're ready to go to college, they might sell some of the investments to actually pay the tuition that they've been investing for. So another reason that you might want to sell your investment is if you're investing in something specific and it hit the price target that you were looking for. So I know this is a beginner's guide, and I've said consistently that you shouldn't invest in individual stocks because it's really hard to do that successfully. But I kind of just wanted to include this anyway in case you ever do decide to try doing that. So generally what will happen is that you'll research a company, and after doing your research, you'll come up with a price target or a number that you think the company's stock should be worth at the time. And if the current price is lower than that number you come up with, then that might be an indicator that you want to buy it. So if you turn out to be right and the price ultimately goes to the price target that you were looking for, then that may be a good time to sell because it's selling for what you think it's worth. However, the opposite is also true. If you decide to invest in a company and then it turns out you were wrong about it, then you may want to sell it and just take a little bit of a loss so that you can move your money over to something else that will have a better chance to be successful. So far, these are all pretty valid reasons that people might want to sell their investments, but I also feel the need to touch on the most common reason that people sell their investments when they shouldn't sell them. So this usually happens when the market is in a downturn and people start getting nervous about how much the market is down and how much money they're afraid they're going to lose. The reason this is bad is because most of the time when people start getting nervous, the market has already gone down a ton and is probably closer to the bottom. So if you were to sell and wait till it starts going back up, you're essentially going to miss out on all of those gains in the middle from when it hit the bottom to when you feel comfortable going back into the market. And people that do this and miss out on all those gains generally get a lot lower return in the long term than people who just stay invested the whole time and keep investing consistently. I'm going to put a chart on the screen right now that shows typical stock market emotions when prices are at different points. So as you can see, the typical emotion is euphoria whenever the market is near its peak, when that's the time that you should really be nervous about investing, because if prices are too high, they're ultimately going to get corrected and go down at some point. And then the emotion at the bottom is panic and depression, when really that's the time when you should be excited and becoming more aggressive because the market is likely going to go up a lot in the future. And then last but not least, we are going to talk about why right now is a really great time to start investing. So in 2022, the S&P 500 was down almost 20%, and even though we've had plus 4% so far in 2023, it's still down about 16 in the last 12 months. I think what the market does this year will be largely dependent on what happens with inflation and how the Fed responds to the inflation numbers that come out. If the Fed decides to keep raising rates and we go into a recession, I think there's probably a good chance the market will go even lower than it already is. But if inflation numbers get better and the Fed decides not to raise rates as much or even lower rates, I think the stock market will really like that and we could see a big recovery sometime this calendar year. With that being said, that's just my opinion. No one, even experts, know what the market is actually going to do, so take what I say about that with a grain of salt. But like I said in part 1 and earlier in this video, you should really just focus on starting investing consistently instead of worrying about what the market is doing and when you should try to get in. It's basically guaranteed that the market is going to go up in the future. The question is just more of when that's going to happen. And that is it. That is all I have for the beginner's guide on how to invest in 2023. If there's anything related to investing this year that you want to know about that I didn't cover in either of the videos, please feel free to leave a comment below and ask me about it. If these are the first videos that you've watched on my channel, please go check out my other ones. I have some other videos about a bunch of different financial topics. And yeah, as always, don't forget to like, comment, subscribe if you enjoyed, and I will see you guys soon in the next video. Peace out.